Danes are voting tomorrow in a snap general election called by the Prime Minister, Mette Frederiksen. She's betting that her handling of Donald Trump's threats against Greenland will help her at the polls. But with economic issues on voters' minds, her centre-left bloc of coalition parties is trailing in opinion polls. Teri Schultz is in Copenhagen, tracking of the vote that's expected to split the parliament between conservative and left-leaning parties.
After the difficulties of dealing with the U.S. president's desire to take over Greenland, Prime Minister Mette Frederiksen is hoping her no-nonsense rejection of his aggressive tactics translates into support at the ballot box.
The fear was there will be war, and what are we going to do if we have to go to war with the U.S., like the biggest military nation? So it's a serious threat. And she really succeeded in gathering all the other European leaders to support Denmark. So that's a very big thing.
Big, but geopolitics aren't necessarily the kind of thing that will determine how people vote. So until the very last moment, Social Democratic leader Frederiksen and other party leaders debated domestic policy.
Denmark has never been richer. Employment has never been higher. We have reduced our debt.
Leading the bloc of conservative parties, Defense Minister Truls Lund Poulsen heads the center-right Liberal Party. He told Frederiksen she shouldn't take personal credit for Denmark getting richer and accused her of wanting to make people poorer now with a new wealth tax.
I don't understand why you want to go in a different direction with higher taxation, where our competitiveness comes into play.
Frederiksen's party leads the polls for now, with the Green Left running second, likely to capitalize on concerns about pig farming practices and cleanliness of drinking water. In previous years, anti-immigrant sentiment was a sure vote-getter for the right-wing populist Danish People's Party. Although it's still polling third, its leader, Morten Messerschmidt, suffered a loss of face due to earlier support for Trump.
They stand to get about 8 or 9% of the vote. But they were pro-Trump. But then because of Greenland, they had to and wheel it all back.
Rounding out the top parties, Alex Van Opslag from the Liberal Alliance wants to take Frederiksen's job, lower taxes, and tighten immigration.
It's time we brought some fresh and new energy, new ideas, and new visions to the table.
But it's likely to be the ultimate political veteran who decides whether Frederiksen keeps her job. Lars Løkke Rasmussen has himself been prime minister twice. He's currently foreign minister and represents the Danish government in negotiations with the U.S. over Greenland. While his moderate party is expected to get fewer than a dozen votes, Frederiksen needs them.
He will be definitely the kingmaker, and he knows how to play it well.
Or queenmaker, as it may well be. Even though domestic issues usually dominate, Jacob Karsbo, a former intelligence officer, thinks this time should have been different in Denmark.
It's entirely fair that parties want to discuss the pigs and, what they want to do about the schooling. But we are in a security situation that is so serious at the global level, where we might not have that much money to spend on all these issues unless we think harder about security and defense at the European level.
He says while the U.S. war on Iran is playing virtually no role in the election, once it's over, many people fear Trump will turn his attention once again to getting Greenland.
That report from our correspondent, Teri Schultz, who joins us now from Copenhagen. Welcome, Teri. So tell us more about how Donald Trump influenced the timing of this election.
Well, Prime Minister Frederiksen says that Donald Trump himself had no say over when Danes go to the polls. It's her decision alone, fair enough. But there was a coincidence between a bump in support for the Social Democrats and for Frederiksen herself and the timing of when she decided to call this election. She could have done it any time before November. But, she's been through so much dealing with Donald Trump that, you could hardly blame her for wanting to get some benefit out of it. And her forceful response to Trump refusing to quiver in face of all his threats. We know just last week we found out that it was even a more forceful response than we had known. We found out that the Danish government had actually prepared to possibly blow up runways on Greenland if the U.S. actually tried to invade. They had planes standing by to evacuate residents. So she, in fact, had an even stronger response to Donald Trump's threats than we knew at the time.
And so is this looking like a done deal for the Prime Minister?
It's a done deal in one sense, expected to be, unless there's some huge upset tomorrow. And that is because the Social Democrats are leading in the polls. They're likely to get the most votes out of any of the 12 parties running for election. But that is not enough votes to govern outright. She's going to have to work with other parties, as she did in her last government. Luckily for her, an ally, the Green Left, is polling second. So she'll have an easy time working with them. But then she's going to have to reach across the divide, as she did in the last government, and work with more conservative parties, possibly the Liberal Alliance, the Danish People's Party, which is a quite conservative party, possibly the Liberal Alliance. She's going to have to work on forming a coalition. That's generally how it goes in Denmark with so many parties.
And you touched on some of the big campaign issues in this election, but you seem to imply immigration not such a big deal, which is not what we're seeing across Europe.
Very true. And it's not that it's not a big deal. It's that all the parties are basically conservative on immigration. Even the Social Democrats, the Prime Minister's party, which in some other countries would take a softer stance, they are very strict on immigration. She herself on the campaign trail has been defending her approach to it. In fact, Denmark, even under Frederiksen's leadership, has been criticized by human rights advocates for how strict they are on asylum seekers, on the low number of approvals that people get. So it's not that it's not big, it's just that it's not so controversial, for better or for worse.
Right. OK, so elections tomorrow, that's Tuesday. How long would it be before the next Prime Minister knows what her or indeed his government looks like?
Well, after the results come in tomorrow night, then the party with the most votes, which again is expected to be the Social Democrats under Frederiksen, will go to the king and get a mandate to form a government. This is, the way it works in many European countries. And then she will start forming her coalition, talking to the other groups. And while she is expected to be leading this effort, she's going to have to basically pay a price to other parties. What is she willing to give up in what would be her ideal platform in order to have them work with her? But I'm told by the people that I spoke with today, the experts, that it doesn't take such a long time as in some other countries, like in Belgium where I live. We've been more than a year without a government. It's expected to take perhaps a couple of weeks at the most before a new cabinet is unveiled. But again, with everything that we're seeing tonight, and I just read the latest polls, it does look like Mette Frederiksen will hold on to a third term as the Danish Prime Minister.
Thank you so much for that, Teri Schultz in Copenhagen.